Well, I mean, we're technically live.
Hello.
Well, I mean, this time the stream works. So.
Welcome to my cave.
Hello. Welcome to my cave. I'm so happy you're finally watching it or listening to it.
Well, I guess
does not watch a podcast.
It's something for me to do while I'm on long drives in the middle of nowhere.
I am a dumb. So I'm just gonna, share this really quick.
Yeah.
Put it to the places it's supposed to be. And then maybe, just maybe, we'll start. Maybe. How are things, Paul?
Oh, things are going pretty well, I think.
Good.
I'm ready to do this podcast. Wish I wasn't so busy, but such is the way of the world.
Hey, man, that's how it goes sometimes.
Why aren't you telling me the temperature in Madison Heights? I don't care about Madison Heights.
That's too bad. I care about the people of Madison Heights and what their beautiful weather is.
Also, god damn it, why is that a thunderstorm on Tuesday and Thursday? Well.
Yeah.
What you gonna do about it?
Cry. Gonna cry.
Cry inside.
All right. Enough of this pre-game shenaniganery.
Enough of the charade?
Yep. Fight song. Go time. Or not. Because somebody muted the sound. Okay. Ready? This time it's for real. Okay. Here we go. Welcome, everybody, to 3DM's podcast. We are on episode 33, and we are finally doing our, bi-weekly
schedule.
On that bi-weekly format. And, I like how he said we did it to have more time to prepare, but life happened to both of us a little bit, and we still didn't get as much time to prepare this one as we wanted to. But I think we've done a pretty bang-up job of getting everything together at the last minute. So,
well, we got more prepared than we usually do.
So. Yeah, kind of. Got a little bit, yeah. So, guys, this week, magic items. I mean, there's not really, I don't have a sexy intro into that. We're talking about magic items and every conceivable angle of magic items we could think about. So, I mean.
Let's have at it.
Yeah, no. What is a magical item, Paul?
Do you want me to give you the obvious explanation?
It's an item that's magical?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
But more importantly, it's an item that a character in Dungeons & Dragons would presumably find some sort of use for, even if that use isn't incredibly obvious. It's definitely got some sort of magical use in nature as opposed to non-magical interesting items, but that doesn't really say much because the different effects of magic can be varied at best.
So, since the dawn of D&D, since, way back in ye old first edition, magic items have always been there as a carrot to dangle for the player. Getting money is fine and good and all that stuff, but, using them gold pieces to get magical stuff has always kind of been the ultimate stick, for the players to proverbially chase like dogs. The amount of dumb shit your players are willing to suddenly sign up for when
magic items are on the line.
Yeah, when magic items are on the line is shocking. And so it's a key part of the game. And honestly, I'm surprised it took us 33 episodes to get into it, but here we go.
Well, First of all, let me start and say that in the really old days of Dungeons & Dragons, 1st edition, and the less old days of Dungeons & Dragons, 2nd edition, you often had magical items that magic weapons would be necessary to beat certain monsters because you literally could not hurt certain monsters without magical weapons. Thankfully, 5th edition has mostly done away with this.
Yeah.
But moving on.
But we'll get into certain aspects about that. So let's talk about step 1. Okay, your DM, your players have just successfully murdered, I don't know, let's say a bunch of orcs. Orcs seem like a good idea for jerks today. They've successfully.
Orcs are always a good idea for jerks.
They successfully cleared out a war camp or whatever, and there's a couple of items laying around, a couple of shinies. So we're just gonna go over the way damn near everybody gets their stuff. Because there's 3 primary ways. There is the looting of it, there is the buying of it, and then there is the finding it in a conveniently placed little area. So let's just get the really annoying one out of the way first, and that is the buying of magical items. So in 3rd edition, Paul, I'll let you do this one because you like this rant.
Okay, well, the thing is in previous editions, that is to say 1st and 2nd edition, you could buy magical items if they're available for sale, but that was a pretty big if. It depended on the size of the city, and it depended on how the GM was feeling that day. And basically, you could not guarantee that you'd be able to find a specific magic item, no matter how large the city you were in was. Sometimes it would involve going on quests, sometimes it would involve attacking people for it. But in 3rd edition, they decided to make it so that you could buy any magical items up to a certain amount in cities of certain sizes. And this is contentious because they also then balanced the game entirely around players having a certain level of magical items at a certain period of time. So monsters' AC and saves would be of a certain level, and their attack bonuses would also be of a certain level, which assumed that you'd had magic items of a certain quantity. Like, for say, at 5th edition, you'd have +1 weapon and +1 armor, and the monsters would be balanced around that. And Pathfinder's also gone to this, but I will leave that be for now. So this is contentious because it makes magic items less of a rare and valuable thing in the world and more of a sort of keyworded, standardized set of attributes that all magic items fall into instead of being things of wonder or things of legendary power.
Yeah.
4th edition also did it. They also required that you have a certain amount of magical power depending on items in the same amount. And 5th edition has thankfully mostly done away with the magic item mart, but in recent books it's sort of come back.
By popular demand. Because I do remember when 5th edition came out, there was a small outcry. You can never really tell by, how many people are mad on the internet exactly how many players are actually cheesed off. But, a lot of people were very upset about the fact that they just didn't have listed prices in the DMG for how much a +1 sword was, so on and so forth. So they added that stuff in Xanathar's. There is a small table that gives you the approximate price of how much
a magic item costs.
Magic item, so common, uncommon, rare, very rare, legendary, and that's the prices they break down, which go from the, oh, good Lord, that's a lot of money, too. Wow, that's a kingdom.
Legendary items will often cost more than the city they're being sold in.
Yeah. Which, Holy
That's
Avenger City, Holy Avenger City.
I mean, to not put too fine a point on it, some magic items I could see being something that would be sold in an actual mart, like healing potions, for example, seems like something that you'd be able to buy in
that
most
there
towns.
would be a capitalistic reason.
But 1,000 gold is a lot of money, guys. Who's gonna buy a sword for the would you buy a switchblade that costs $100,000?
I mean, it depends on how much switchblading I do.
It just seems like something that would not have a great rate of return.
Yeah.
So to speak, you'd not have people selling a mart full of magic items to people because nobody has that kind of money except for the fabulously rich murder hobos that wander into town and wreck the local economy.
Yes. So that brings us to, with buying it, it's if it's your game, it's your stuff, it's how you want to do it. If you want to change prices, that's fine. It would make sense for a higher fantasy setting to, there might be like a blacksmith shop that exists, and they just like all they do is crank out magic stuff, and you show up there and you can buy whatever you want to buy. It makes sense in a high fantasy setting. In a more in a low fantasy or mid fantasy, kind of like a Skyrim kind of a thing, it makes more sense that you're not able to just
like you may find
dude.
one or two in a city, but they're either not for sale or they're so prohibitively expensive that unless you're going at like from city to find a specific item, you're not going to be able to afford it.
Now, here is actually one thing from 3.5 that I do really enjoy that I wish they would bring back, and that would be the masterwork quality.
Yeah, that's
for weaponry. I still run it in my game as just a house rule, where it's just it's not necessarily a magic item, but it is
an item of fantastic quality.
Yeah, it's just so damn good that it might as well be magic.
And I can understand that. That seems useful, but 5th edition did go a long way out of its way to try to remove as many plus bonuses as they could.
Yes.
Which I think is good because endgame Dungeons & Dragons ended up being stacking a certain amount of bonuses to do stuff.
But if you want to do if you wanted to do the purchasing thing, little thing I recommend is just doing, saying stuff is masterwork.
Yeah.
Because you can't really get past +1 with masterwork anyways, It's
yeah.
like I've always viewed it as like +2, that's where there's X amount of magic involved.
I did want to say one more thing, if you don't mind, is that in my games, I would consider that common and uncommon magical items could be purchased with some regularity, but anything beyond that has to be found or stolen or looted.
Yeah. Or the
because
theft at the auction house kind of thing.
Because a caravan or a courier is going to be able to get a bag of holding or a handy haversack if they're working for a particularly powerful noble, but you're not going to be able to get an instant fortress just by checking the local market.
Right. So that leaves us with our other two options. Lootin', which is, I think, everybody's favorite way of getting a magical item. And that we'll jump more into the looting aspect in a little bit because it's there is a certain balance between design and random table. And then finding.
Yeah.
Finding an item is just a fun little plot hook. It's a great way to, again, just, you just do the scene from Indiana Jones. There's a sword on a pedestal. Hope you avoid the giant falling rock.
Either that or you do the Lord of the Rings thing where you find, in the middle of your explorations, you find a magic ring hidden on the floor and somebody wants it back.
Yep. So a lot of ways you can do, stuff like that. So let's go on to actually talking about custom versus
random.
And this is kind of a hard thing for a lot of DMs to start with because on one hand, it's it's a very fine line.
Planning out what each character is going to get can be difficult, but at the same time, you don't want one character to get all of the stuff and everyone else to sort of fall behind.
Yeah. And it's also like there is a time where if you like design the loot a little too perfectly for them, that they will kind of balk. I've had that happen with some players where the loot is like, you can tell it was literally
it was made there for you.
Yeah, exactly for them. And they're like, oh, how convenient. The exact sword that does exactly what is beneficial to what I like to do. And then, they just give you a little smile and a wave.
I should note, and this is only slightly related to the topic at hand, but I wanted to say it when we were talking about looting earlier, is that if you're looting magic items from monsters, unless they're physically incapable of using them, they should be using them.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going through that orc encampment, somebody should have been using that +1 axe or whatever.
Yeah, somebody should have been. You just, oh, wow, no, he had this the whole time. I don't know why he was just using his random axe, a random orc NPC from the corner. Well, it was his daddy's axe. He didn't want to use the magic one. He liked to use his daddy's axe. Oh, okay, well, we just unpacked a whole bunch of daddy issues here.
We're going to get into the discussion of plus magic items versus talking about items as fantastical things later.
But so the idea of, the random table is you go into the back of your handy-dandy DMG, you pop that bad boy open, and you just roll them D-hundos to see what random items pop out. And there is a remarkably fine line between just, hey, here is a you're a fighter. Here is a maul, or some random weapon that maybe you wouldn't have thought you'd use. It's got these certain qualities, and it's yours now. And then there is, fighter man. I rolled randomly on the table, and here is something that does absolutely nothing.
Here is your cape of the manta ray.
Yeah, here's your cape of the manta ray. The sorcerer got a wand. Well, it doesn't matter what the sorcerer got. You're stuck with a cape of the manta ray. I hope you plan on swimming, Chief.
Yeah, the thing about random is that it does sort of put a more organic feel to the magic items in the world. If you're using the sort of tableized and cookie cutter magic items like the +1 swords instead of naming swords and having them. We'll get to that in a moment. But the world is not just simply lining up for your party to come on through in most cases. So they should probably have at least a degree of things that are not necessarily immediately useful to the player.
Right.
But on the other hand, entrusting your character's advancement to random dice means that there's a very strong chance that they're going to be the winners on a game show as they're showered in money and magic items, as opposed to where you get 1 potion of healing from killing a young adult dragon.
Yeah. So let's go into a little bit of customization stuff. You definitely do need to, like, I'm normally not pretty, like, hard on how you exactly need to run your game, but I do think that a certain level of customizing weapons, armor, or just like little flavor things about these items for your player base really helps them get into character. A lot of people find that, I found that normally when I give a player a magic item with a kind of a cool background or like a cool name and a cool look and
hopefully
stuff.
all 3 of those, honestly.
Yeah. I'm able to tie all these 3 things, these like little elements together and give that to that player. That player suddenly has a much stronger feel and connection to their character. They're not just using this sword that I picked out at character creation. They are now wielding, wound or, ass
the
kicker.
bone saw.
Yeah, the bone saw, or, whatever the hell you want to call it. It gives them, suddenly their investment in this character just became greater because they have
a personalized legend that you're working with.
Exactly. They feel like they're creating their own legend, and part of that legend is, Arthur is only so kick-ass without Excalibur.
Yeah.
We can go through every damn story.
Gaybulg from, Irish myth.
Yeah, hell, even Harry Potter has his fucking wand. Okay,
it's
with
true.
his Phoenix feather core, and it's Holly or whatever. Someone's gonna yell at me, and you didn't read enough Harry Potter. Yeah, you're right. But the point is, though, in damn near every bit of fantasy fiction, your main character or your protagonist usually has some form of signature item. It's
I'm vaguely reminded actually of Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, which is a seminal tale for Dungeons and Dragons, which I recommend everybody read because it's pretty much a great story of a fighter and a rogue going on an adventure repeatedly, where they had named their weapons, but they kept losing their weapons, so every sword they picked up was the sword with this name. So that's something to also consider, is you don't necessarily need magical weapons to tell a legend with your weaponry.
Yeah, but ultimately, though, the idea is, cool design, a little bit of a backstory, give them something. Suddenly your players buy in. And when your players buy in, it's easier just to run the game.
Yes. One other thing I'd like to add is that you should probably avoid, and this is, again, I can't tell you how you're going to run your game, but this is my suggestion, is if you're going to give a player a magical weapon out of the book, do not describe what it is first. Like if it's, for example, a +3 sword, don't call it a +3 sword. Describe what the sword looks like, its name, and its history as your players would know it, and they ask what its statistics are. You can tell them that it's a +3, it has +3 to attack and +3 to damage. But outside of that, call it only by its name or by its reputation.
Yeah, if you're going for a much more, if you're, thematically, because there are some tables where, we like to play numbers and crunch and roll dice. Fine. If you're going for a bit, much more story-driven thing, then yes, describing the weapon in detail beforehand and all that stuff. I mean, the beauty of phones and text messaging is if ever I give a player something, I can just text them.
Yeah.
The details of the weapon, and I can just describe it to everybody else. And so everybody just, for example, in our game on Wednesdays, Paul just got a spear with flame tongue. You know, badass.
A burning spear of magnificent quality.
I described it to everybody at the table. You know, the spear is on fire. You know, and I do all the imagery and stuff. And then I just tell Paul later in private, it's flame tongue.
It's a +2 flame tongue spear.
Yeah, +2 flame tongue. Have fun.
It should be noted that at a certain level, there's a trade-off between having items be too cookie cutter, I guess. Like, I'm having a very hard time describing this, so please bear with me.
All right.
But it feels like if your weapon is magical, you should know it as something by more than its keywords.
Yeah.
If an item is magical, it should be an item of either fantastic or power or legendary quality. Not, we crank out 500 of these +1 swords every week.
Listen, if you call in to the Fantasy Mart right now, we'll
going to throw in a +1 longsword absolutely free.
Absolutely free. You won't believe the deals we're giving away here today. Yeah, trying to create that mythology in your own game is very important for making these items awesome. Because again, whenever you think of any fictional item from any, myth or legend or tale or story, it always works the same damn way. Hercules getting the Nemean lion skin, that we had that whole setup with the Nemean lion had impenetrable skin, except for the only thing that could get through it was its claws.
We don't call it the cape of invulnerability or whatever. It's the Nemean lion's skin.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on to the next, because I've rambled about that long enough.
Yeah, no, so, we dove into it a little bit, but just to kind of put a tidy little bow on it too. Making sure each of your players gets at least one signature item that's kind of their own, just again, really
to help tell their legend.
Be it a shield, be it a arcane focus, a weapon, a set of armor. Just find a way to,
give your player a personal, magical thing that helps with their story.
Yeah. So moving on. And this is more from a wacky problem that kind of comes up after you've done this cycle a couple of times. Level 3, level 4, everybody's finally got like their cool thing. They've got their cool weapon. They got a couple maybe potions in the back pocket. But let's start ramping up a little bit. You get to around level 6, level 7. If you're not careful,
your players can end up with a pile of stuff.
The quandary doesn't have a really cute name. It's
the Monty Hall problem. Okay, let's call it that.
It's too much shit versus not enough shit. And that's the best way to boil it down, because what ends up happening is either your players have 85 potions, 55 wands,
a bandolier to carry the wands and pull them off one by one.
Yeah, like 7 bags of holding to keep their random potions, assorted. Various
this
oils. This
one's for blue potions.
This one's for blue. This one's for reds. This one's for greens. Various oils. Like when your party has to sit there and actually kind of do an accounting thing on how much shit they actually have, plus managing gold. For some players, that's their jam. For other players, it can bog everything down.
Adding bookkeeping. Dungeons & Dragons is already a fairly rules-heavy role-playing game. I'm just going to say that out right now. There's a lot of stuff to manage compared to, say, Powered by the Apocalypse or Fate.
Yeah.
Adding up 15 different magic items, they have to keep track of what they do, too, is also I'm going to tell you, it's a bad idea. Some players will be into that. Like, I personally love managing lots of different things and keeping different juggling balls in the air, but most people are going to forget about things and feel like they're not using the stuff they have, and the impact of new magical stuff will feel less.
Yeah.
On the other hand, 5th edition still has a lot of monsters in it that require that you deal some sort of magical damage to them for it to stick. For example, in my recent game, my players have been fighting a lot of undead. Wights are resistant to non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing, which means they have an absurd amount of hit points with a party that has one magical weapon.
No, I love your one magical weapon. We had this conversation in the car.
We'll talk about that in a little bit, but
the fantasy butter knife never goes dull.
So you need to think about, because you either need to start removing the resistance to non-magical damage on some monsters, or you need to consider giving out at least a couple magic items by a certain level. because that's just how the game. I'm not going to say that it fits tone wise, but that's just how the game is balanced. So be cognizant of that. That's my piece on that.
No, sorry, I was going to step in there, but I had a frog in my throat. It's a very delicate balancing act that has to be maintained when you're giving your party loot, and it kind of goes back to the acquisition part of getting the loot. That's why I'm pretty fond of when I'm writing out an area that I know is going to be packed with loot. I'll write a majority of the stuff, and then I will roll on the random items table once or twice just to see if something that makes sense is there. Like if it's like, okay, we do the whole breakdown and we'll say it's on table H. Okay, I don't know why this thieves guild that's in a landlocked city has a fucking trident of fish command. I mean, I could explain it away and I could write a story up for it, or I could just not give the players a trident of fucking fish command.
Give them a trident mole command.
Yes, moles.
The moles will consume you. Yeah. Also, one of our listeners just commented that in defense of 4th edition, unlike 3rd edition, also had an optional rule in the Dungeon Master's Guide, which allowed you to change the progression bonuses so that you didn't need magical items.
Yeah, it's a sentence you hear more and more every day. In defense of 4th edition.
Yeah.
And it's funny how time and distance make the heart grow fonder.
Indeed. But anyway, back to the
main point, though. And when it comes to just giving your players too much stuff, again, we've already talked about bookkeeping, but at the same time, you need to make sure your players have enough
and feel like they're progressing when they do things.
A good a quality example, I think, of like what let's say what a 5th level person should look like. Assuming
a 5th level character is a regional hero. So.
Yeah, they probably have a +1 weapon. Maybe
Probably.
a +1 armor.
They probably have a +1 something. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, they got a +1 weapon. They've either got a +1 armor or maybe a shield,
which is a magically enchanted thing,
or or like a random cloak. They usually have one other like kind of useful magical object, like portable hole, bag of holding,
a movable rod,
some kind of wacky thing like floating amongst the party. There should be about 3 of those, and then. Wands and potions are something we'll dive into a little bit more later, but I do hate on every damn loot table I've ever seen that like when you look at high level play, it's just there's like 85 potions. And it's like, I'm just going to sit here and
healing potions are a necessity. I'm going to get to this right now. Despite my often stated hatred of magics, except for hard support magics, which I usually play, healing potions are necessary for parties that do not have a dedicated healer. And clerics are not really dedicated healers anymore, so almost every party needs healing potions. But all these other potions, they feel kind of extraneous.
Well, it's funny, too, because it's the Final Fantasy effect always happens, in that a lot of times players won't use the potions because they're afraid that
a better opportunity will come up later.
They might need it later, and then they just end the game with a bajillion potions.
I would be very careful with your potions outside of a couple, like, if your players specifically go to their way looking to make a potion to allow all of them to climb walls, I would say go ahead and let them brew it with a couple weeks' work or something for whatever their heist plan is. But I would take a lot of the potions out of the random table and replace it with, like, honestly, if we go into the Dungeon Master's Guide and we look at the magic item table A, I would take about half those potions out and replace them with random art items or gem items.
Yeah, just loot stuff. Because... I mean,
you don't need most of these potions.
And this not obviously none of this applies if your table actually drinks potions like they're going out of style. Like them bitches have an expiration date and Costco wants the bottles back.
There's a deposit on the bottles.
Yeah, there's a
deposit. Be damned if you're not
going
to.
Listen, I paid an extra 10 cents for that healing potion, okay? I'm going to get that damn deposit back.
Pass them around like party favors.
Yeah, pass them around. You want a little healing potion? Here, bud. Here, guy. The same happens with oils. Oils, potions. They're all the same.
Oils, I know they exist in older editions, but they really feel to me like a relic of 3rd edition.
Yeah.
Where they were sort of a stopgap if you didn't have a plus weapon with enough to overcome the monster's damage resistance.
Yeah.
I don't know. Look, I've ranted enough on this one. I'm going to just stay quiet on that bit.
Okay. alternatives to, as Paul suggested. I've got word salad today. I'm sorry. As Paul suggested, a great idea again is to replace with art objects. Another quality idea is you can, instead of handing out random ability potions, I like random kind of small magical item effects if you can come up with them, like cute little quality of life stuff.
Yes, that people would have in a universe with lots of magic,
Which
but would not necessarily be useful for an adventure. Like as we discussed, as we briefly alluded to earlier, the first magical weapon that my party got their hands on in my Friday game was a kitchen knife that never ever dulls. And that has seen so much use for reasons that you would probably not expect, is that, again, a lot of monsters are immune to damage from non-magical weapons. So this kitchen knife has been used to kill, I think, at least 15 undead that have resistance to non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. And the other one I've seen is in my now defunct Tuesday game, they had a jug of alcohol that would refill every day. And sure, that's not going to be useful for most adventurers, but who wouldn't want to have a jug that refills with liquor every day?
Yeah, no, adds to the story, adds to the legend. In Xanathar's, there is a small list of just like kind of neat little effects, like neat, not super, powerful magic items. It's more just like
the folklore items. Like, this is my feather that when a loved one is in danger, it turns red.
Yeah. Helm that, makes the eyes go like glow red, and that's kind of all it does.
A necklace that makes your sleep always restful.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Shit you would buy if you lived in this fantasy world and you saved up, and it's like, man, I tell you what, I'm tired of my drinks being warm all the time. We don't have this thing called refrigeration.
Yeah. I want this ring that whenever I'm holding it, my drink is always frosty.
Little details like that just add more immersion.
Knickknacks that the local wizard would make to sell.
To sell to the local populace, for reasonable sums of, 5 gold, 10 gold,
Yeah, sure, it'd be a luxury item, but it's not useful for an adventurer or for an army, so.
So that brings us to the very next bit. Although I do want to take a step back because that did make me think of something. Talking about that, your fantasy butter knife, your kitchen knife that never goes dull. And that is the concept of leveling weapons. This is something that you'll see in RPGs or video games a lot, where over time, after enough usages, the item will level up, kind of like a player. And I'm kind of springing this one on you, Paul, because we didn't discuss this beforehand.
Well, I'm going to sprinkling on you in a little bit here, so go ahead.
Okay. So like thoughts, feelings on eventually that, knife actually developing some properties after it's been in enough,
sticky situations.
Yeah. It's been shoved into enough, what I'm assuming is necromantically made undead at this point.
And necromancers at this point.
Yeah, no,
the
exactly.
knife killed 3 necromancers last week.
So, exactly. So, at some point it's got to be...
It's actually a pretty high magic setting, so yes, I think at some point perhaps that knife will develop more magical properties. And I think, additionally, weapons sort of developing alongside you also adds again to their legend, as opposed to, this is a +4 Vorpal sword, this is a Sabarak, the sword that has slain 1,000 hobgoblins.
Yeah.
It grows stronger with the blood of each one it kills.
Arthur never threw Excalibur away because he found a better sword.
Found Excalibur +2.
Yeah. Oh, well, found Excalibur 2 and don't need you anymore. Well, just chucks over the shoulder.
Yeah. I should note that there's also, you can give signature items that may or may not actually be useful for combat at all. One example I was going to bring up is in Exalted 3rd edition, one of my players had a wooden staff that could be used in combat like a quarterstaff, but was not intended for that purpose, because what it did is if you planted it in the ground like a tree sapling, it would grow into a fruit tree that would feed you and up to 10 other people, and its limbs could be cut off for firewood every night. So it would provide food and shelter and firewood, and you could take it back out every day. And that is a cool magical item, because that's a hell of a story you can tell with that.
And it's very practical.
And sure, again, you can use it in a fight, but it's just a quarterstaff.
Yeah, it's just a beaten stick. I'm just going to hit you with a stick.
Yeah. So that's all I had to say about that.
No, that's exactly what we're going for here. Which let's just, we got everyday usage items that we're talking about, and just one last time we're going to jump into customization and everyday usage. Just trying to hit this nail home, this nail on the head, sending it home, that the best way to, really endear items to your players is to make them do something that is incredibly useful to the players, and it becomes part of the player's identity.
Yeah. It doesn't even need to necessarily be very good in combat. Again, with the magic staff, that was sort of a player's thing.
Yeah.
Is they could always provide food for 10 people.
Yeah, and it becomes part of what that character does on a daily. I'm trying to think of, I guess, because weirdly I got Harry Potter on the brain all of a sudden again. But like Hermione had her the
Time Turner?
Yeah, the Time Turner,
Which
in book 3
should have came. Shit, that thing was
should have came back later, but yeah, no, because everybody still talks about it. Neville Longbottom had the Remember All. Which was.
Although I should point out, and this should be so blindingly obvious that I'm probably going to get slapped for this, but Harry Potter is a fairly high magic setting.
Yeah, no, but still, little knickknacks like that. When you think of these characters, you also think of that little knickknack, and that's ultimately what we're getting at. Let's talk about some of the big shit, though.
The big 5, I believe we had listed.
Yeah, the items that usually come up in either stories about how something went wrong or something went right.
And the ones that show up in every game.
Yeah, the ones that show up in every game. So let's start with just the one that I think
has started the most stories out of any item in Dungeons & Dragons.
Yeah. The ultimate shit stirrer, and the opinion on it is...
divided, shall we say.
Thoroughly divided. Deck of many things. This horse has been beaten to death.
We're not going to talk too much about the pluses and minuses of it. It will do something. It will definitely have an effect on your game.
And
good or bad, spin the wheel, make a deal.
Yeah. So just grazing over the deck of many things, if you're watching a D&D podcast, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with
the deck of many things.
If you'd like to know more, go check out Matt Colville's shit on it. Go check out Nerdarchy's shit on it.
If you're somebody who has not played Dungeons & Dragons and is somehow listening to the show, like my grandma occasionally, hi Grandma.
Hi Graham.
The deck of many things is a magical deck of playing cards that has a different effect depending on which card is drawn.
Yeah.
From gaining a level to gaining an absurd amount of money to losing all of your worldly possessions to having your soul taken out of your body and stored in the possession of a powerful demon.
It can give you a really good day or it can give you a really bad day. As a DM, quite simply using the deck of many things, there's only 3 reasons it would come out. Reason number 1, and this is valid for you as a DM, you want to test yourself. The deck of many things...
it is the ultimate improv test.
Yeah, it literally will just take your lovely written, planned plot, your bullet points that you're trying to hit with your plot, and it will kick it straight in the dick. It is not... most planned games do not last the deck of many things because the plan changes very quickly.
Yes, it's no plan survives contact with the enemy taken to 11.
Yeah, taken to the chance that there are like 10 different chances that something's gonna get fucked up.
10 different enemies walking around you with beaten sticks, slapping them into your hands, waiting for you to draw.
Reason number 2, you would use the deck of many things. As a plot device, it's actually
everybody would want it.
Yeah, no, every person would want it. It would be, even though I'm not a fan of the movie, it would be like in Bright when everyone's trying to get the magic wand. Like even, well, that's the whole shtick in the movie. It's like, oh, well, only 0.000 fucking nobody can use this magic wand, but if you can, it's amazing. Same thing with deck of many things. Kingdoms would fight over it because...
Sure, you can have a random peasant yell of it. Sure, what if Billy Bob, the peasant, loses all of his worldly possessions? How much do you think he cares?
Yeah, he doesn't give a shit. And even then...
oh, no, I lost a horse and my 2 silver.
Yeah, likewise, the king who gets it doesn't think... it's like when you buy a scratch-off ticket. You don't buy a scratch-off ticket because you think, oh, well, I just wasted $20. You buy a scratch-off ticket because you think you're about to win $2 million.
Admittedly, though, like the more you have, the more you stand to lose with it.
Yeah.
So they'd probably gift it to more loyal but impoverished servants.
But you could definitely see a king or nations or powerful entities just fighting over it, and then the players coming onto it and then having to make that decision, knowing that the good and bad can happen. That's out there for them. And reason number 3 you want to use the deck of many things is, frankly, you've had enough of your players' shit.
I do not endorse this, by the way.
Yeah, no, this is not, like, I don't recommend this at all, but that is the ultimate put up or shut up on the table, because either everything is about to go really great for them or you are about to just ruin the game. But
you're going to completely change how the game goes.
Yeah. So, yeah.
You could roll into number 3.
Yeah.
You'd like to shake things up and see where they settle because things have been too solved for your liking.
Yeah. But yeah, Deck of Many Things. Go check out Coville. Go check out everybody. They'll break down what every card does.
Well, we're going to give our own personal recommendation that you cut out a couple of the cards. Only one of these is in the standard 13-card deck. Most of the 22-card decks have a much stronger impact on the game, including the completely BS balance card.
Yeah.
Which just feels stupid because the importance of alignment has been removed. In this
Importance of alignment has been removed, but it's also really hard for, I find most players struggle with that. They get that card and, like, they've already, they know exactly who they want to play, what they're trying to play. And then,
just to sum up, the balance card reverses your alignment.
Yeah. And, suddenly, I was the neutral good ranger. Now I'm the neutral evil ranger. Shit.
How do I roleplay that change?
It's a hard thing for, you'd have to be a very good player to roll with that punch. So balance can go right away. Talons can go because it...
Talons undoes all of the hard work you've ever given to your player. Their magic items all vanish.
Yeah, they're all just destroyed. They're gone. Done.
I mean, artifacts actually are supposedly reappear elsewhere later,
but
not in the possession of the player.
Yeah, but the point being, though, it messes...
It just completely changes the tempo of the character story.
All 40 minutes of the shit we just talked about is undone. Let's see. And Void, as far as, like, the bad consequences stuff.
Yeah.
Because Void is just basically, congratulations, roll a new character. There is a way around it, where you can, you can definitely write some clever stuff.
Very high level to deal with those.
Yeah, but even then, a lot of it involves a wish and a bunch of other stuff.
If your best friend was taken and put into hell, and you don't know how to get to hell or even magic at all, how far are you going to go to retrieve him? Like, you don't even know if it's possible to get him back. How much money are you willing to dump into this pit to get him back?
Enough.
I believe there was one more, was just Vizier, which Vizier is an interesting one because it's in the 22-card deck, so it's obviously quite rare.
Yeah.
But Vizier is interesting because in some games it has the potential to be an utterly average draw, and in other games a plot-ruining device.
Yeah. Vizier allows the player to ask the DM one question, and the DM has to answer truthfully and has to be helpful. So you can't sit there and you can't
spout off a cryptic riddle because the character has to be able to understand and use whatever information
they have to take what information they use, and it all comes down to the player. Like, if the player asks a poor question,
then sure, whatever, the Vizier card is not a huge problem. But if you're playing a highly political game with multiple factions and the player asks, like, how can I solve the solution with everyone coming out happy? You're like, shit,
yeah. No, that's when you just pour a cup of whiskey and
all right, man, take 5.
Yeah, light a cigar. This will be about 15 minutes. I got to figure out how to solve my own bullshit. So I'd pull Vizier, and if anything, I would probably pull maybe the Moon card, but that's more of a me personally thing. I think the Wish spell is
1d3 wishes is rough.
Yeah, it's rough on you, and it's the funny thing about players getting wishes who weren't expecting to have wishes is
they're probably going to get burned pretty quickly, but they're probably going to be even more think fast.
That and just like the amount of dickery they can kind of do. But I want to do a separate episode on the Wish spell one day because
we'll talk about signature spells.
Yeah, that's a high level biatch. So next item, and this one, we're going from the event changing to, like, this is just the most useful thing for your party.
Most iconic item in Dungeons & Dragons. My mother references this, and she's never played.
Yeah, Bag of Holding.
Of Dungeons & Dragons in her life. The Bag of Holding. It holds up to 600 pounds of items and always weighs 15 pounds.
Yep.
It's up to 64 cubic feet of space. That's pretty much all it does. But the utility of being able to carry 600 pounds of stuff as 15 pounds should not be underestimated.
Like, I'm not going to lie, I hate my games being simulationist because I don't want my players to have to sit there and go, well, am I over encumbered? Am I carrying too much weight? What's my push? What's my drag? The only time I ever try to figure out push and drag is if it's like they're...
I'm going to carry this gold-encrusted throne home.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Or if it's in like a bang bang situation where like they need to shove something off a cliff, or we actually need to figure out what your muscles can do, then that's when I care. But other than that, I do not want my players to have to sit there and
puzzle out their push, lift, drag.
Yeah, and exactly how much they can carry, and what do I need to leave behind? I'll just throw the shit in a bag of holding.
Can I just say, thank God 5th edition removed most of the nonsense that comes to deal with that.
Yeah. Moving on. Same thing with handy haversack, except
handy haversack, it carries a lot less stuff. It carries a total of, I believe, around 200 pounds. But whenever you reach into the bag, whatever you're looking for is always right there. And that's another great item that I think would appear in like a regular world.
Yeah.
Like a world in which magic items are a regular thing. You'd have, this is my magical toolbox that whenever I reach into it, the tool I'm looking for is always right there.
Yeah. It's, it's a bitchin' item.
It's also only 5 pounds. So
yeah.
Fits in the TSA. Then.
And then there's, what is it? It's Helver's haversack?
That's the handy haversack.
No, the other sack, the bigger bag of holding.
Jeez, I can't remember. Not the portable hole, surely.
No.
Havard's handy haversack?
Yeah, I believe so.
Something like that.
Yeah, there's a bigger bag of holding. But point being,
you can just carry multiples of them. You can't put them inside each other; things explode. But
yeah.
They're only 15 pounds.
And also too, I've seen so much creativity used with a bag of holding. Shout out to Andrew, who once comedically stuffed him and his because they were two rogues and they were both partners of crime. He was an arcane trickster, and so they put themselves inside a bag of holding, and he used Mage Hand to fly their little bag up onto a rooftop, and they used it creatively and amazingly. If only they just hadn't jumped into a lit fireplace and didn't think about that part.
I'm reminded also, unfortunately, of Orzhov the Pokemon.
Yeah.
Where the paladin was just sitting in a bag of holding while the rogue did the talking to people and would jump out and beat people up whenever the need
Yickety yak.
came about.
Yickety yak.
Get in the sack.
Get in the sack.
That was incredibly boring as a player who was in the bag, but it was an ingenious idea. It's a great way to smuggle people in.
Yeah, it really is. And that, let's move on. Instant Fortress, because we're going to burn through some of these, because there is one thing I really want to get to.
The Instant Fortress. You throw it down on the ground, and it forms, I believe it's a 15 by 15 pillar of stone.
Yeah.
That is basically a portable fortress.
Yeah, portable fortress.
Everyone in the area makes a dex save or takes 10d10 bludgeoning damage, which is, ow.
Yeah.
10d10.
It is one of my favorite items to give players.
Just to see how they'll use it.
Well, in the older editions, you could get away with dropping that shit on people. Now it says you in this edition you have to have it on the ground. But
you can't throw it on a flat surface anymore. It has to be placed on the ground.
Yeah. But what I do love about it is it's a neat, tidy way to give your players their stronghold. And if you got them, jaunting all over the world and stuff, because, some of my campaigns, you're going everywhere.
You're not going to the Magnificent Mansion because nobody's got time for the spell slots for that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a nice spell.
It is a nice spell, but, just the idea of, it's a super cool item and they get it and boom. They have a place to stay.
Also, I think the Instant Fortress, outside of the next item on this list, is the item with the most shenanigans that have been thought about that involve it.
Yeah.
The Instant Fortress is an idea that almost everyone has a different wacky use for.
Or at least some theory that, you have to then sit there and try to
figure out whether or not it's possible.
With rules if it is allowed. The next item
let's get to that next item.
The immovable rod. Just Google immovable rod stories because they're always fucking hilarious.
I think my personal favorite is the one that stays perfectly still in the universe, but your planet is rotating around it, so it takes off at incredible speeds, and you press the button. So as your planet spins, it stays in the exact same place and moves at 600 miles an hour through a castle. The thing is that to sum it up, the immovable rod is, I believe, a foot-long black metal thing with a button on it. When you press the button, it just sits there in midair. And it takes something absurd like a DC 30 strength check to push it, which in 5th edition is damn near impossible if you're not a cloud giant or something.
Yeah, cloud giant Tarask.
And even then, you're like, I need an 18 for the Tarask to push this thing.
Yeah.
So Long story short, the immovable rod can be used for dozens of things. You can use 2 of them as an impromptu ladder, or 3 of them is probably better. You can use one to bar a door pretty much perfectly. You can use one to hold something in midair. You can use one to block, to hold a grate shut.
Yeah.
Basically, if you want something to stay where it shouldn't, you can use an
The
immovable rod to
for
do it.
Again, we could sit here and just read the stories, but no. Just go Google immovable rod stories because they're always hilarious. And they're very creative. And then the last thing, actually, we'll skip the last thing, but just sum it up quick. Wands. Every player ends up getting wands at some point.
I think ultimately wands sort of detract from the fantasy of every weapon having a unique story, but they were necessary in older editions to cast rare spells.
Yes. However, I do enjoy the idea of a wand. There's a couple of wands where, loaded with an offensive spell or like a light offensive spell, like a
wand of magic missile is something that most magic-using militaries would probably have a couple of.
Yeah, like a wizard having one, or object like that. Also, like a limited cast of invisibility or whatever. It's kind of like the potion, but players are more weird.
Likely to use it because you've got 10 of them.
Yeah. Players are weird though. Like they'll use the wand, but they'll never drink the potion. At least that's been my experience. But let's get on to the last bit because we got about 10 more minutes of show. Sentient items and cursed items.
This is one thing I'm going to fully admit I don't know the origins of. I know sentient items have been around for a long time, but I don't know the edition they originated in.
Yeah.
So a sentient item is an item with its own mind. Wow. Paul bringing the hard-hitting commentary here.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, ooh, revelatory. I had no idea.
There's a couple different ways to go about this. In 3rd edition, for all my hatred of 3rd edition, 3rd edition did do a decent job of describing the different variations of sentient items, which 5th edition does a lot less work, heavy lifting on, which is probably for the best, because thinking about the alignment and goals of a sentient item, while important, is not something you need 10 tables of. So a sentient item obviously has its own mind, which means that it's basically an NPC that you're going to keep around. Generally, you'll want it to be attached to a useful magical item, and it will do something useful and will probably draw the player who uses it, towards a specific goal.
I mean, yeah, they show up in a lot of the pre-written adventures and stuff. Really quick, just as an aside, like for where I find the biggest use for sentient items is actually in trying to coax roleplay out of players who have a hard time like getting
into the character. Yeah,
getting into the character or like relating to the rest of the party. I'm going to use a quality example of I had a player who played a fighter who was named Anur Goldmane, and he was Bill Goldberg in fantasy. Basically, he just walked around and kicked ass and murdered everything.
But he stayed very aloof and wouldn't interact with the other players.
Yep, he didn't have much interaction with the players other than talking shit to them, which fits for a character. But that I was trying to coax more out of him so people could at least have that kind of meta understanding of like who he really is. And so I designed a series of 3 sentient items that he would wear. It was a set of armor, shield, and a sword. Honor, pride, and glory.
And each of them had their own motivations and tried to convince him to do things relating to their goals.
Glory was always used for comedic effect because it was just a sword that just, basically reinforced everything he ever wanted to do. But the sword or the shield and the armor actually, tried to appeal more to his humanity. He was kind of a butcher on the battlefield. Like, he was not a good guy. We keep joking that like that character is actually a bit of a bastard. And he's like, oh, but no, he was a good guy. He's
technically good,
kind of a warlord. But the point being, with that and being able to have those conversations, like having him talk to his shield and having his armor talk to him,
other than looking like a lunatic,
other than him looking fucking insane, was it allowed the rest of the party to actually get a much deeper understanding of who the character was.
Yeah, so it's useful if you want to have an NPC around who will be always taken with the player characters, but does not necessarily need to be babysat.
Yeah, it is a good. It's a good way to substitute if you don't want to do the NPC or like a DM NPC. Like for example, the one game I have the wizard who follows everybody around because it was a fucking druid, a cleric, and a paladin. No one could roll
some
any
arcane magic.
No one could roll any
tests.
intelligence tests.
Until the very end of the campaign.
Yeah, they were all really bad at it. So, I made the wizard just to, go with them just so they could have somebody who could, feasibly be the brains on shit.
It's also a way to add color commentary without necessarily mocking your players. Well, I mean, the item can mock the players, but they can, make fun of the item in return.
You can do the same, but yeah, you can do the same concept though as, instead of giving them a wizard, give them a sentient item that just knows, or like, has been around for a long time and, has gained knowledge or whatever. It's
a useful tool. I don't use them very much because I find that I already use a lot of characters, but I think if you have a character that's very closed off or you'd like to inject some more color commentary in a fairly solitary campaign,
or you would like to, maybe give them, maybe they're floundering in purpose or whatever, like maybe the rest of the party has, like their stuff tied to this horse, but they don't. Sentient items. They're badass. And they're great for horror stuff, too.
Yeah. Especially because they can try to take over the mind of the person using them.
Hand of Vecna. Which I would love to talk about the Hand of Vecna more, but we don't have time. Although I guess that is a good segue into cursed items. And that's the last bit. Paul, how do you feel about putting them curses on your, putting them spells on your boys?
Well, I'm actually not a huge fan of cursed items, all told, but I have used them a decent amount. I feel like it's sort of a cheap shot at the players who are expecting some sort of powerful item, and most of my games tend to be higher power than cursed items would generally allow.
Yeah.
That said, I do often implement curses on items that are otherwise useful. One of my players in, again, my Exalted game had a magical axe that could cut through just about anything, but constantly demanded blood and would compel the player to violence if they hadn't fought enough stuff recently.
Isn't that, I think I know where you got that. Isn't that from Don't Starve, but instead of cutting trees or eating wood? Yeah.
Well,
it's close. It's close. It's in spitting
I'm
distance.
not going to say anything about that because I got some of my players listening, but maybe. Hello, Lucy the Axe.
Maybe.
Just replace blood with maple syrup.
I do. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you on that idea for the curses because, I mean, as we've talked about.
Who intentionally makes a magical item that's bad? It's got to be something that was intended to be helpful and has gone wrong.
Yeah, it was that or, some asshole, probably a lich, maybe a cleric, put a curse on the object just to quit it from being helpful. I do, however, like the idea for storytelling purposes, and sometimes like the high risk, high reward shit is fantastic on a cursed item. Like, having the ability to have a player actively have to make that choice. Like, I'm trying to remember what it is. It's the Axe of Berserking, or it's an item like that.
Gives advantage on attack rolls, but forces you to attack the closest target or something like that.
Yeah, well, you have to like roll. But the point is, just the options of a player suddenly having to make that choice to deal with a curse. One that I saw that I actually really enjoyed conceptually was it was a +2 mace, and this was like in a kind of a homebrew think tank, but I really like the idea on paper. And this mace, every 2 rounds, drains 1 constitution point from you temporarily. You can regain it after a short enough rest, but you do regain half of the damage done as HP for both you and every ally within 10 feet. And so, the idea being eventually, your constitution goes down, your HP ultimately goes down, but you're able to heal everybody around you. An idea of a curse like that is
interesting.
Yeah, like I could definitely see a paladin going, well, I guess I'm losing constitution for a bit. Wacko, 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 wacko.
One thing I don't like is cursed items that you're forced to keep, because that feels way too much like a gotcha.
Yeah. No, yeah, that I will say that is bad DMing. If there's something cool about a cursed item, You know, like a cursed
You
item.
should probably make them want to hold on to it rather than you can't let go of it.
Or, you know, just imply the let's find a way to get rid of the curse.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty straightforward. All right, final thoughts, Paul, because we've got to wrap up.
Magic items are a useful tool, but I think they've been somewhat overused by modern editions of Dungeons & Dragons.
Okay. I can definitely agree. I have the idea of, or I particularly enjoy the idea of less is more.
Yes.
I think by the end of like a 10th level campaign, I think every player should have about 5 magic items.
I could see that.
That, you know,
I would do more 3 or 4 myself, but
yeah, you know, granting my pace, you know, like, I mean, this is just me because I only, you know, I DM at my speed. You know, a campaign from 1 to level 10 would take me probably about 5 or 6 months.
yeah.
And so I think over that time frame, every player just, you know, getting a new shiny every couple of weeks, just a, you know, a pretty new pet to play with, ultimately makes people happy.
Yeah.
And, you know, just try to flex your creative muscles. Cool weapon design in item design is paramount to just good storytelling, because not only does it help invest your players in their own characters, but it also helps them invest in your world, because if they start seeing cool shit like that they just got, I bet there's even cooler shit out there.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, that's going to be our show this week, guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We record out of the Podcast Detroit studios in Royal Oak, Michigan. If you're in southeastern Michigan area and you'd like to start a podcast, it's as easy as going to PodcastDetroit.com and contacting and getting more information from there. Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/3DMs, spelled THREE.
The old way.
The old way.
We're on Twitter, too.
3DMs Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at 3DMs Podcast. Twitter.com/3, spelled the old-fashioned way, _DMs_pod. And
We have a Discord.
we do have a Discord. Yeah, we'll plug the Discord. After this show, head to our Facebook page, and we will throw up a link to our Discord. You can come in there, hang out. We're going to try to get a blog going just to sum up the ideas that we got for every episode, and I want to start posting more stuff in the Discord.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, guys, that's our show this week. I think next week next time we get together, we're going to be doing Dragon Heist.
Dragon Heist sounds good.
Yeah, I'm going to hopefully be picking that up shortly. So we'll talk about what you can do with an absurd amount of money. Till then, roll well, guys, and we'll see you when we see you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
I just felt